238th version of Science of the Southland. Jack Purdy and Jake Grant here. Akshay Swarn is flying back to Atlanta from a friend's wedding. So hopefully he gets through the turbulence all right. It was a great weekend to not be in Atlanta, as a few of my friends were. And I was like, you picked a good weekend, but we're out. We're clear out of the hurricane. I mean, Atlanta didn't get hit that hard, but we're
I
clear out. Um,
I was gonna say the South Side did not flood too much.
no,
I never lost power at
our
least.
area was
Not that it
fine.
was a good weekend, but it was
No,
fine.
it wasn't. I hope if there's anyone in North Carolina listening, we hope you're doing all right because I know my cousin's out there, and that has been
Yeah,
scary to look at. So I hope y'all uh, get power sooner, whatever needs to happen to get y'all back on y'all's feet.
for
Today
sure.
we're gonna go through some volleyball. It was the off week for football, of course. This is gonna be a more volleyball and other sports centric episode. There's a couple football notes we'll throw in here, but not that much. And then some tennis stuff, swam against Emory, so we'll cover that. And then a little bit of prep for what golf has coming up next because they got the meat of their fall slate on the way. Volleyball wise, if you listen to our preview episode on late last week, you would have known that we have SMU and number one Pitt showing up to play us in volleyball in O'Keefe Gymnasium. Uh, Here's the problem: we got swept in both of those matches, and not particularly closely, really, in any of the sets too, which is very new for Tech. So new, in fact, that based off what I could find, this was the first time since 2013 Tech has gone 0-6 in a weekend home slate, which means this has never happened in the Michelle Collier era. And back then in 2013, we were a very, very different. Everything was different about the program back then. So it
Yeah.
took 11
And
years
the
for that to
league
happen.
too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, yeah, and that was who was it? It was Wake Forest and someone else who were those two teams. There was one ranked game
Yeah,
in there, but nonetheless, it's been 11 years since this has happened because we've just been that good for that long. Lost 3-0 to SMU, number 23rd ranked SMU. Jake was at this game. I was not at this game. I was at one of my multiple weddings of the weekend. Uh, Give me the lowdown of how this looked. Why was this not a good matchup for Tech in the end? Like, just what was it that gave SMU a good shot at getting us?
yeah. I've been trying to I was doing lawn work today, so I was out there, thinking through my head, prepping, grinding the tape, if you will. And I think I can sum it up in probably two to three key points. The first is that SMU had a lot of power. They had power on their serve, they had power on their hits, they had good hitting, they had aggressive use of the middles at times that was very effective. But whatever they were doing was fast and precise. That was certainly one thing that screamed off the page to the point where and went there with some folks who were showing around campus and stuff like that. But the first thing that the kid was showing around noticed, he's like, "Do all volleyball coaches carry speed radar guns?" And I was like, "What are you
No,
talking about?"
they
But
don't.
they do. They were charting all the plays, radar guns. But I thought that piece was particularly emblematic of SMU, and I assume based on on that piece of tech that it's probably something that is ingrained into their program. So that's the first piece, and we can talk about how that affected tech in a sec. Um, the second piece that I want to distill it down to is blocking or lack thereof for Georgia Tech.
Yep.
SMU was pretty effective. They were good at sending one or two and getting it right back on the Tech side of the court in a way that was generally a tricky ball to play.
Mm-hmm.
Tech up the middle. I think we have shown signs with some of the folks we have there, but certainly I think blocking was an issue. I don't think it was particularly a Tech isn't going the extra mile. Tech is higher on errors in certain ways, but if you're hitting into blocks, if you're not catching hands on hits that are a little higher, if you may not have as much of the court as you were working with against Florida or whatnot, it's a game that never particularly felt close or in at hand,
Right.
even though there were a few really good 6 or 7 point type, 5-1 to Georgia Tech or 6-1 to Georgia Tech types
Mm-hmm.
runs in there to make a couple of the sets close. But I don't know. I don't want to say that it was never ever close. There were some good moments, but man,
Yeah, I'm looking at the run. I'm
they
very
they
happy that
handled business.
I'm very happy that the if you go on RamblingWreck.com. The box scores are far more detailed this year than they used to be, so you can get a sense of how
Yeah.
the game actually ran. The first set did get
Hmm.
to 22-22,
Yep.
and then lost 3 sets. Lost the final 3 points on a kill. Bianca Berlin had an attack error, and then Maya Tabron got the set clinching point for the Mustangs. And then second set, SMU did not lose the lead once. Third set did get to ties up to 10-10, and then
Yeah.
that was then a string for SMU, and they kind of kept it in that 3 to 4 point gap. We got it to 17-16, uh, but that was as close as we ever got again. So
The
this is in general a lot of playing from behind. Um,
yep.
there was never I mean, at no point in this match was there a true. I mean, there was never a like true definite like control that existed in this match. It looks like.
And I want to point out that I don't have any issues with coaches getting animated or coaches challenging or any of that stuff. Um, it always circles back to the game's never going to be perfect. I would say if you think you have a reasonable time to, use a challenge or something like that, to go for it or give the ref a little bit of your opinion to go for it. The one point where I thought this was weird, and I'm fairly certain you don't know that this happened because I know that you were at a wedding and I explicitly didn't mention this because I want your on the spot reaction.
Okay.
Um, when the buzzer goes off or sound goes off at Georgia Tech
Mm-hmm.
in the past,
Mm-hmm.
clearly accidental, have they played through the point or have they reset? Because I legitimately could not remember. I feel like I've seen points where they've kept it on the board and ones where they've replayed point, like almost to the discretion of the ref. I don't know if that's a
I don't know if I actually remember a moment that happening. The only time I can remember something even close to it was at one point. I forgot what team it was here, but they had put in a player with a number that wasn't on the roster, and we caught it. The
mm,
scorers table caught it, but the refs knew about that, but the scorers didn't know about it. So like they started pressing the buzzer over and over, and the refs just I
yeah,
don't know how they didn't hear the buzzer going off 8 times in a row, but they did, and then just let
yeah.
the point play on, and then they figured it out. Um, so I guess in that one case, yeah, the point just happened, the serve just happened, and they just played it through and then figured it out from there. But no, I don't know. I guess I think in that case, yeah, it's up to the ref of what makes sense to do more than anything. I'm sure there's a rule somewhere in there, like it's then I'll let or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, just because I thought I had seen it both ways, and I just kind of scrolled through the box score and I couldn't necessarily see it screaming out at me as anything other than they just recorded whatever,
Yeah,
wound up actually being counted as a point. But there was a point where that happened for Tech and it would have been a kill, wound up going the other way. And that's a 2 point swing in in
yeah,
a game or match set even, that where points were hard to come by for Tech. I don't think that changes the outcome of the game just straight up. I mean,
yeah.
maybe there's a time or two, but that comes with the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
In other cases where it's like if it, you know, barely grazes a line and it's a missed call, something like that, I don't have so much of an issue with it. I just was like, I can't even remember, that being a consistent thing. But that was certainly a 2 point swing in there. I think the thing I want to circle one more point on before we get into Georgia Tech specific stuff is one point on SMU is that power piece, right? They were very effective. They had good outside hitting. They had good attacks from the middles. They had good serves. But there were also points where, that serve is strong, but it sails high. It goes into the net. I could definitely see this team as it looks forward, still being powerful, but uncalibrated, if that
Right.
makes sense. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that SMU is a perfect team or a team that like throttled Tech in any of these sets. It was just an edge out of reach was the vibe I had the whole time. And Georgia Tech didn't have a lot of answers I mean, there was the blocking did get better, I think, in the third set, at least from just the feel of it. But yeah, no, it was one of those games, one of those matches where it's like there's just something slightly off. They're not getting the blocks, they're not getting the kills.
Yeah.
It's not our night. Like, and that's frustrating because you don't want the new folks in the conference, new invites, all that kind of thing. You don't want
Yeah.
them to, come into your building and get a win in their first conference game. But I mean, they're a talented team and they got the wins to prove it. So
Yeah. That third set, Tech had one total block.
Yeah.
It was a Pierce Fisher half block each situation, and
Yeah.
SMU had 29 attacks to our 27 with 14 kills to our 12. We also had 6 errors in that, which was a big reason why it seems like we lost that set, which is generally not great. Um,
I will note that they had 0 blocks altogether in the first. That one I do know because that's when I went, oh no, at the end of the first. So
let's see here. First set says, yep, that's a 0.
yeah,
That's a blocking error on Emiliano, and that's it. Uh, so
yeah,
uh, it looks like teams are targeting Sofia Velez a lot here as well.
yep,
That's
yep.
two reception errors in the third set. Uh, Two by Otane in the second set. First set there's none, thankfully, but still going at there. If
And
Sofia or Otane are able to get got, they're hitting to them on the back line.
and even then, those aren't going to get scored as reception errors, even when it's off the reception, a ball, with little control flying back over the
Yeah,
net, and boom, now
exactly.
you put yourself in a place where there's a net violation, and that happened several
Yeah,
times throughout the match, and
we we
that swings points. Those are points that in a tight game you can't afford to lose.
we got to expand game on paper to volleyball so we can get these stats in the moment at some point. Um,
Just start shoveling money to the evolve guys,
would be hey, hey if he can do it, that'd be amazing. Um, yeah. Otherwise, I think this match is just one of those you get shot ourselves in the foot in too many ways. There's too many errors. Like just can't have that. And that was a lot of the theme today against Pitt. It's Pitt was it's a different animal. Like I I truly did restrain myself in our last episode of like trying to not overhype them too much and whatnot, except that they played exactly better than the hype I gave. Like it was true.
I believe it.
I've been to game. I've been going to games since 2021. There's been a lot of good teams to come in that building.
Hmm.
Notably them and Louisville when they're at their best and whatnot.
Yeah.
BYU a couple times, San Diego. There truly was. I truly think. I mean, this was the first time ever the number one team ranked at the time had come to Tech. So this was a new kind of game for Tech. Only the sixth time in school history or in program history they've played the number one team or in a regular season or postseason. First time in the regular season in quite a while, and they looked like the number one team. Like it was. I remember seeing what Texas looked like last year, what Nebraska looked like last year. I remember what it looked like when we played Nebraska last year in the tournament. This team looks a
Hmm.
lot better than that Nebraska team, like far and away. They make getting the most craziest of digs that should be at most just like tiny little pancake slides. They get that ball up 8 feet in the air, and they can transform any dire looking situation into pure complete offense for them. There is not really a hole on this team. They hit 493. They were over five. They hit 522 in both of the first two sets. They have now won 36 straight sets to start the season after they swept Clemson on Friday. Um, Olivia Babcock,
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was about to roll straight into. I don't know what they did against Clemson, but I'm sure it was a sweep
it sure
based on how
was.
they've been playing and
Olivia
played against
Babcock
us.
had 12 kills and 10 was it 10 yeah, 10 digs for her double double. It was the only double double anyone had in the entire game. But when I mean there was when I say there wasn't enough points to go around, there wasn't enough points to go around. They beat us 25-11, 25-17, 25-8.
Yeah, that is not what you want. They
I
made
don't
us look like we made
it,
what Alabama State look like.
they made us look like Alabama. They made us look like Alabama State junior varsity, if you want to put it that way. Like we were down 19-4 in the first set.
Yeah,
And finally got something going after that and actually won more points than they did to close the set before they got to 25. Second set was the only normal-ish one that we had. There was 6 ties but only one lead changed once Pitt took the lead. We got the first point of the set, which was nice on a Rachel Fairbanks serving error, but that was it. That first set of our first 5 points we scored, 4 of them were on Pitt service errors, which means that in the first 26 in the first 23 points we had one offensive point, 1 for 24 to start, which is
yikes.
both
But
a but both an accusation of like our we have to be able to figure this out, but also a no Pitt's defense is actually that good. Like
well, and there was even a stretch like that against SMU. I think it might have been in the second, but it might have been in the third. Doesn't matter when, where it was. Tech couldn't buy a point. They got,
yeah,
maybe two of 3 points of that they had totaled so far against or by service errors from SMU. And if you're not going to be able to grab those, then or
yeah,
grab anything else besides those, then what are you going to
yeah.
do? And also on top of it, I think I distinctly recall one of them we gave back because we had a service error of our own, and it's
Oh
like,
boy.
well, great.
Well, I will.
What else can you do?
I will note this weekend we've been without Eloise Suarez, and we're going to be until
Yep.
November because she's got a broken finger. She got a very visible cast on her hand at the games,
Hmm.
and that really throws a wrench into our 6-2 rotation that we really like to do, and that is a unique challenge for teams when they play us. It's not common that we do that. This is a much more Brazilian thing that Michele does. Um, but the problem is Ashlyn Goolsby, who is the third string setter, is just not there, is not all the way there when it comes to top of the ACC level play that you need. She's definitely not a bad player. Like she got on this team by her own merit, but it was in the points that she played today. I think she played like 15 or 16. We only won 2 of those points. Pitt was on multiple separate 5+ point runs when Goolsby was setting for us, which is not blaming her specifically, but we cannot generate the offense we needed to when we're getting those serves. Like we have the chance to side out on a lot of those serves. Like we should be able to, no matter who is serving back there, even if it's Olivia Babcock with possibly the best jump serve in the country. Like we can still dig. Like Bertolino dug plenty of them just fine to set ourselves up, and it still wasn't happening.
Well, and I think that's emblematic too of kind of that middle blocking point, right?
Right.
You've got decent, so solid play with Mogridge out there. No shame against
She had the best weekend of
relatively
anybody.
undersized other set
She had a
of
good
middle
weekend in
blockers.
general, actually.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
exactly. But it's just not something that Tech's getting consistent defense or offense out
yeah,
of. And if
yeah.
you take out the middle third of the net in any given time,
Right.
then that's a lot of your versatility and flexibility, and also a lot shorter of a pass than going outside to outside
It
or
is.
something
We
like
had,
that.
yeah,
So
I think what was really clear to see from just the first couple points was how quickly Pitt could get to the block, could get their block up before we could, on our standard, like Emiliano to Otsney in the pin or Emiliano to Mendez or Bertolino. Like it did not matter. Pitt was always there. We never
yeah,
beat them. We very, very rarely beat them to the point of contact at the net where we had to be faster than them to even have a chance in this match. And we just were so slow in that regard. Um,
yep.
but not like ridiculously out of system that we looked hopeless. Like we were still getting points up. We were getting balls up. Pitt just can put you away faster than just about anyone can in the country. So you never really get a shot to establish real rhythm against them once they get on the front foot. Like you have to, if you're going to beat this team, you have to land the first punch in a set, and you have to do it 3 times and figure out, or at least keep it close, and then just be the one to really land the first punch. And we never got close to that at all. Um, in general, this was also a weird match in terms of subs. I would say when they did do the 6-2, they started with Laura Fisher and then switched to Leah Harper. They didn't even use the 6-2 in the second set, which again was where we put up 17 points, and then they just didn't do it. There was a couple truly atrocious calls by the refs that got Claudio Pinheiro his normal yellow card that he gets every game. I think Michele may have gotten one in this game as well. I saw them draw it out twice, but
And,
there was
and
a couple. There was a double touch and a couple other calls that just set it. It set the bench off really hard, and I think in the end that just kind of started, especially in the third set. It seemed like things started tail spinning from there. It's just the vibes were so bad of what was getting fed to
it,
us.
that's interesting too, in that there was a couple plays where they didn't necessarily challenge or even the buzzer play or something like that on
Mhm.
Friday, where I'm like, I was honestly surprised not to get more of a reaction from the team or the coaches.
Oh,
I don't
I
believe
forgot
there
to
were
mention
any
this.
yellow
Here's
cards or
how
anything like that.
here's how,
But
to my point of landing that first punch. Here's how desperate Tech was to land that first punch. First point, Mendez hits one long. It definitely looks like it went far. To me, it seemed like there was no touch. They were complaining. Collier challenged the first point of the match.
jeez.
Did not win that. It was not. It was never. They looked at it for a long time. I'll give them that. Like it was not a bad thing to check, but it was. so long. It was like there is no way they're overturning this if they're looking at it this long. Like you're in the play stands realm of replay
Yeah,
situations versus
we're
it,
not going to see anything that, yeah,
they needed the
I gotcha.
4K cameras that they don't have to catch that. Which I mean, it may have been. There's people I was watching with when we saw replays on another monitor. They they were convinced it was a touch. Granted, I was surrounded by tech people. I
Mm.
never saw clear and convincing evidence, at least by my eye. And that's what the refs saw as well. So I will note this was a very well attended match for a Sunday afternoon. The crowd definitely showed up for to support him. So I'm glad we got this kind of crowd for, against the top team in the country. Like no one left until that match was over. Granted, it was only an hour 24, so it wasn't hard to. It was just easy to stick around the whole time. Um, but all right, the crowd never lost any gusto. I think that was fun to
That's
see.
good.
It was
Yeah.
also just the get it when we got points. It was so nice when we did. So they get a great cheers whenever they did get points with how few and far between they were. Um, but
So, Jack, I've got a couple of odds and ends data points that
okay,
I want to point out. Um, First, SMU. They're really good.
they
I would
are.
like to point out that they went up to Clemson this week, who is not very good. But they made them look decidedly worse than Tech looked. It was a 25-16, 25-10, 25-16 showing
Woo,
for SMU Clemson. I feel very confident in saying that this is a team that's probably a little bit underrated
I think that's fair. Yeah,
based on their showing, and I am very interested to
they literally
see
beat
them start
Nebraska
to get
this.
a.
They literally beat Nebraska. So
Mhm.
like they're good. We know they're good.
Yeah. Um, which dare I say, ACC rounding into some form as perhaps the best volleyball
Ooh,
conference in the country.
I
Maybe
know.
we'll workshop that take a little bit. I do want to note that Tech gets Notre Dame on the road on Friday and then Louisville on Sunday. Louisville did sweep Stanford today.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
if you caught that.
I did not.
Number
I didn't.
five,
Okay.
Louisville. Number three, Stanford. I expect those rankings to be switched, perhaps even maybe, dare I say, a Pitt, Nebraska, Louisville sandwich. I think the Nebraska Louisville actual head-to-head data point is probably going to stand up in that ranking.
Yeah.
But give it a rematch. Maybe that looks a little different because clearly Louisville is figuring something out. Related, I know that I paid. Homage is not the word. Fear is probably more the word. Last week, when I was at Ulmer Stadium, I did see L&N Federal Credit Union House of Pain. I want you to tell me, Jack, your guess. They've played a number of home games so far this year. How
Yeah.
many have been at the Yum Center? How many have been at L&N? This is a
Oh,
new scheduling tact for them.
yes.
They've played some downtown, but
I know. Well, I watched their match against Nebraska on TV when they
mhm.
did play when they lost to Nebraska. But I know that's not the only time they played like a top team this year either at home because all those Midwestern teams just schedule each other.
Yep,
Uh, I've got let's see here. We're at Tech is at 12. Wait, there are 12 games played this season. Uh,
yep.
I assume most of Louisville's have been at home. Let's go with three for now.
So, one, to Louisville's credit, they did go on the road to the Northern Kentucky tournament. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
That was a nice little trio for them. They did play Penn State on the road, but they've played six of their seven home games so far at
That's
the Yum Center.
fantastic. I mean, they're
Six of
good. I
the
mean,
seven. They're
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 good enough.
non-con.
Yeah.
hmm Their non-con downtown was number three Wisconsin, number 15 Tennessee, number nine Creighton. They Kentucky was on the road. They have
Yeah.
number five Nebraska at the Yum, and then of course Stanford, who was then became number five
Yeah.
or number three. Sorry, was at the Yum as well. They played one game at L&N. That was Cal on Friday. All that to say, Tech gets them in that building on Sunday. Um,
Okay.
Perhaps it doesn't feel like home. I don't know. I'm trying to find an angle here, but
I mean,
certainly,
I'd like that. I'd like that. I
yeah,
mean, I know our girls don't like playing in the L&N House of Pain because we never do
yeah.
anything in that building. So who knows? A different vibe of a place could be nice.
So,
Um.
anyways, and also a weekend to circle, October 25th and October 27th, Friday and Sunday. Louisville plays Pitt on the road and plays SMU on the road
Okay.
as well. So potential for some good volleyball that weekend there. So,
That's good. Good to know. Good to know. At
yeah.
worst, I mean, I know. So sadly, at best, this has just been a massive RPI bump for us. So, which is
That's one way to put it.
It's something. Playing the number one team does always help in that regard.
Yeah.
Getting the SMU win would have been very nice, but I mean, we have to play these kind of matches to help boost that up. I mean, Michelle is very cognizant of that when it comes to the scheduling and whatnot. That's what makes the ACC stronger right now as well. We are 0-2 in the conference right now after the first weekend of conference play. As Jake mentioned, we have Notre Dame coming up, which is at this point we're going to be playing from behind for a while at 0-2, so cannot lose that. And then, hey, last time we played Louisville, we won, so there is that.
That is a good point.
We are on
That
a
is a
one
good
game
point.
winning streak against Louisville for the first time since I started paying attention to this state. Uh, so would be cool. Would
We
be cool if they kept that up. Would be cool. So
we
I
we don't
think
have to
in
unbox the sweat game there either.
no, in terms of actually like do it like Notre Dame's got to be a get right game. I mean,
Yep.
we saw them tech just wipe the floor over against Florida. We know they're good. They beat BYU. We know both those teams are good and they've stayed good. So it's not like
Yep.
Tech doesn't have this in them. BYU, I mean SMU figured something out and Pitt played like themselves. I think is the way to ascertain this. So there's uh, I mean negative, plenty of negatives there. You never want to score 8 points in a set and lose a match that way. Like that is humiliating no matter how you put that. So, and I
Yep.
know, and there's no one who knows that more than Tech volleyball. So, yeah, hopefully we played really well last time at Notre Dame a couple years ago, and then we'll see what happens against Louisville if we can pull it off. Uh, with that, let's hear from the good old Section 103 people.
Yeah, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103, one thing I do want to highlight this week is the ability to vote on new shirts. We haven't talked about that in a while, and it's something that I do appreciate there. Gives Stephen and the gang a way to know what we are interested as Georgia Tech fans, as Section 103 customers, because I will tell you firsthand, both Jack and I are of course, loyal as Section 103 customers, in addition to loving that they're a supporter of this podcast. But yes, check out their polls. That is a great way to be engaged with the brand and help them decide what to make next. I did notice, I don't think we've mentioned this here, a PE 1010 swimming George P. Purdell shirt, which combines both George P. Purdell and drown proofing. Which rules, and I really hope that gets made. So consider this me trying to influence the polls on section103.com because that shirt rules. As always, code FTRS 10% off, free shipping on orders over $80. You can find them at section103.com or at section103 on Twitter. Jack, what do we got next?
Let's do a little bit of football. This was a bye week for Tech, so did not have to play. Another team that happens to play in the state of Georgia lost this week, that was a very nice thing to see, despite how crazy of a comeback that was by the Georgia Bulldogs. Um, Tech specific, hey, they lost. They still lost right now. Well, the Braves are actively losing right now, but if they can pull this off, we're gonna have a perfect Atlanta weekend between the various footballs and Georgia winning. If you're a Tech fan, the main note, which I don't remember if we mentioned this last week, but Christian Leary, if y'all watched the Louisville game, you definitely heard this. Christian Leary is no longer with the team. He left for personal reasons, according to Chad Bishop's article on the AJC. So we definitely hope all the best for him. It's sad to see him go. So we are down a wide receiver for the season on the depth chart. I want to just look at ACC positioning more than anything after this week. Just we haven't talked much about the ACC as a whole. Right now, standings wise, Clemson's at the top at 2-0. We're the only us and Florida State has played 4 conference games right now. Four of their 5 games have been in conference games. They lost I think they lost last night. They're 1-3 in the conference right now. We're 1-2 in the conference. Pitt has not played a single conference game yet, and it is and this was week 5. So that is something. Miami and Duke Miami, Duke, and Pitt though are the only overall undefeated. Miami's at 5-0, Duke is at 5-0 somehow, and then Pitt is at 4-0, but much easier scheduling. Then Clemson's at 3-1. Only loss was to Georgia. SMU is at 4-1. Louisville 3-1. Boston College 4-1. They were without Castellanos last week or this past game as well, but they managed to win there. And then game day is going to Cal for the Cal Miami game this week. So the Calgorithm will have another week of fun. For those that are on Twitter and know about the very hilarious AI art that they have been proudly posting, I would say. It's been one of the best things on Twitter the last week and a half. I guess mainly, Jake, I just want to ask, just ascertaining some vibes. We're square middle of the pack, but it's a weird middle of the pack because some teams have only played one game. Pitt hasn't even registered a conference game yet. We're at 3-2. in a way we didn't, in a very Tech way, got to 3-2 in the way we didn't expect to get to 3-2. Uh,
Yep.
in some ways could be 2-3, but in other very valid ways could be 5-0 right now. And we have
Except the final score part.
except for the part that actually matters, which is when the clock hits 0. I think they really should make these games 65 minutes. We should propose that rule. Um, we got the research triangle, two of the three research triangle teams coming up here in Duke and North Carolina. It feels like, I mean, I think we all know this is the time to get 2 wins. Like we really, getting these 2 wins does solves a lot of problems for the back end of the schedule in terms of what we may need from there. But knowing where we're sitting at conference wise, how do you feel about this team right now?
You know, making a bowl game, and I know we've said this on the podcast, with this schedule this year, it's going to be a tough call no matter what. I think the ACC may not get the flowers it deserves currently, but it's a really competitive league.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fight in a lot of teams. I think Virginia Tech exemplified that against Miami on Friday. I say that particularly because both of those teams are on our schedule, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe after week 1 or week 0, when you're, Tech has beaten FSU, and FSU hasn't played Boston College yet, so we don't know that they're kind of
Right.
fraudulent.
Yeah.
And Virginia Tech has lost to Vandy. Pencil that one in as a win. That
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are no
Mm-hmm.
there are no penciled wins on this schedule. I think Duke and UNC. Well, we can talk about UNC when the time comes. I have purposefully tried to avoid mention of their defensive coordinator and how cathartic, I think, for many of us, we feel we need to beat that team
Mm-hmm.
in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ways, and to the point of like make them look embarrassed kind of way, which is
Yes.
probably not healthy for folks' mentality. So that's why we don't
We have
mention it.
hey,
But
James
if
Madison already got the first blow. At least James
if
Madison happened.
if we're talking about teams that looked fine-ish but fundamentally flawed, that game on Saturday, Duke UNC, was emblematic of that. If Georgia
Yeah.
Tech can play good ball coming off a bye, a well-needed bye, I would
Mm-hmm.
argue, 5 straight
Absolutely.
games to start the year, playing teams on much more rest and much less film out there. I think that you never really want to pencil in a game as must wins or like season defining, especially when it's still got half of it left. But I think I think the season hinges on Duke, UNC, you got a Virginia Tech, NC State. That's the meat of the schedule right there.
Yeah.
Those are the teams that you gotta just take advantage of playing them. You got to take advantage of playing Duke at home under the lights against a first year coach that doesn't look like a perfect team. Georgia Tech isn't a perfect team either, but
No.
that's 1 week at a time, of course. But this is there are not a lot of gimmies left on the schedule. Notre Dame just beat a
No.
Louisville team that we struggled with in certain ways last week, and we see them later in the month too. So all that to say, everything relates to everything. The ACC is eating itself. It just is a matter of if Tech can get to 6 or 7.
Right. Right. I mean, looking at the schedule last year after our bye weeks, I'm pulling this up right now. Things definitely started kind of getting back to the upswings.
Yep.
We played a bunch of games in a row: Louisville, South Carolina State, Ole Miss, Wake Forest, Bowling Green, and then the Miracle of Miami Gardens, and then the had the week off, had that loss to Boston College, which wasn't great, but that was that bye week, and then we had won 3 of our next 4 that we absolutely had to win to
It's
get that bowl game. So and one of those
it's
ones
almost like
was
it was a different season vibes
it
wise
really felt like a different year. I
between the
mean,
two.
I think that's accurate. I think it really did feel different. We put up 23 against Boston College. I mean, we got Castellanos, and I think if
And that was like a hangover game
it
too,
was
in
a
a lot
weird
of
game.
ways. It felt like.
It was a weird game. It was a road game coming. I mean, that was the first one off the bye, and I just we're not ready to play that kind of game quite yet. I would say. And then North Carolina happened with the return of Paul Johnson, just one of the most exhilarating moments I think for either of us as Tech fans since we got to school. And then I mean, beat the brakes off of Virginia, like truly beat the brakes off of Virginia. Clemson happened. Clemson's just tough to play, beat, and then won that game against Syracuse, and then you win the Gasparilla Bowl. So I'll be very curious how this goes down because we're in a
Yeah.
similar case. I mean, it's not. I mean, Duke doesn't have a Castellanos level guy on their team for us to like put the fear of God against us, but it's still a week off going on the road at a ACC opponent who so far has not like they have not lost. That is their deal. Like they haven't lost yet.
Duke's coming to us, man.
Oh, that's right. I'm right.
It's
Never
not on the
mind.
road.
Hey, even better. Okay, so
But but
let
and to that point, I do want to say one thing, and we'll talk about more in the preview. That the one like big guy in the next couple of weeks that I'm like, is certainly Amarian Hampton
yeah,
from UNC.
yeah, yeah,
There's a lot of flaws on that team. Horrific injury to starting quarterback week one will put you in a weird hole on offense. But
right.
at the end of the day, they've got one all world type player
Yeah.
there. Duke, I don't think has that same level of one guy, but they've shown themselves to be incredibly competent, coming back from three scores in a big rivalry game, weird Northwestern night game stuff like that.
They have yeah, they
For a
have
short year and a first year coach, they've seen a lot, I think is what I'm kind of put
they've
there.
had
And
a
they've been delightfully competent. Like Manny Diaz teams are generally pretty competent enough,
yeah.
maybe not that high ceiling, but
Their opponents this year have not been ones that I would call amazing. They played
yes.
Elon, beat them 26-3, fine. They played Northwestern in that really weird game in the
Yep.
in the Lakeside Stadium that went to double OT and won 26-20, and then beat UConn 26-21, beat Middle Tennessee State with ease, and then just barely held off UNC 21-20. So they haven't dominated in any of these Power Five adjacent games at all this season, and they haven't been against the most remarkable of teams. So I think we are squarely the best team they will have played uh, so far
Yeah.
this season. They play FSU after us. I just think this would be one of the more hilarious 6-1 teams if we happen to beat them, and then they beat Florida State. Like that just screams like that. We know there's something else going on here with Duke.
I'm
Again,
just glad Cal's still getting game day despite losing to
right.
that garbage team in Tallahassee.
If you, yeah, Duke's offensive profile is, according to Game on Paper, not good. 120th in the country in terms of offensive EPA, total EPA, and 118th in EPA per play. Defensively, it looks a lot better. Eighth in EPA per play. But then again, I will remind you, they played Elon, Northwestern, UConn, Middle Tennessee State, and North Carolina, and none of those teams put up more than 21 points or more than
And I'm of
21 points. So
I'm of two minds here, right? One, Manny Diaz, defensive pedigree. Other hand, we took their defensive coordinator, so like
yes, yes.
these things seem to equal out in effect.
Yes, it'll be interesting. And I mean, no one. I mean, our offense is one of the more unique ones out there in the country too, in terms of the rushing stuff. Which again, the rushing hasn't been great the last two Power Five games at all.
No,
But a week
been
off,
quite poor.
it's gonna be nice. I think Jamal Haynes especially needed it. He has not looked 100% in any of these games recently as well. So I think
No.
that'll be it. I have not planned to do a full fledged preview pod for this game, but I still might. I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll talk to Chad. I owe him. I owe him a invite. Maybe Ken. Ooh, maybe Ken. I don't know. Actually, I'm gonna save Ken for the Notre Dame game. I'm saving Ken for that. But that's
Jack's
what
going through his Rolodex live
that's.
on air.
Hey, we got to go through. I mean, we got a great bullpen here. We got a great bullpen. We got to make
Hey,
sure they all get starts. We got to make sure they all get appearances. We can't have anyone want to leave the
if it
transfer.
helps, if it helps, my dad has absolutely no qualifications, but every time he and I talk, he's like, "When am I coming on?" I'm like, "You
Hey,
know nothing about this school, so
if we need a position player to pitch, he's in line. He's in line. I gotta burn my
Yeah,
relievers first.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Nonetheless,
No,
this game is 8 o'clock Saturday at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Please be there. The students do care. The players do care that people show up and they show up en masse. That is a thing that changes situation.
and the other fans do care.
The other
Speaking
fans
from my own
that
experience,
they do
it's
that
more fun to see all y'all there. Like that.
it
That's
is.
the point.
It is, and it's impactful on recruits. When they see a vibrant Bobby Dodd Stadium, that matters for the future of the program. So, all right,
Even just a loud one too. It's ACC Network for the game. If you guys aren't there in person,
there you
by
go.
the way.
All right, ACC Network, and hopefully it is a good. I mean, the weather's been cooling down, so I think it'll be a fun night there at Bobby Dodd.
76, supposed to be beautiful.
Oh,
I'm very
fantastic!
excited.
All right, that's gonna be
Mhm.
great. It's gonna be great. All right, let's move on to the smaller sports here. We got club hockey, we got tennis, swimming happened, softball did a little bit of things, golf is doing some things. Jake, this is your domain, so you just go at this how you want to go
Yeah,
at this.
I'm gonna do this 2 minute drill style. Club hockey 0-4-0-1. They lost 3-6 to Auburn in Columbus. Hopefully they can figure it out. Moving on. Men's tennis doubles. We had two sets. Nate Bonetto, new name, Gabriele Brancatelli, and Chris Aurora and Richard Biagiotti. They wrapped up doubles consolations at ITA All Americans. Pretty good showings for those double set matches. That's a little bit longer than doubles tend to run during the team season, but they did win all four of those sets. And of course, those were the last matches they had lost previously to being consolations in the first place. All that to say, Tech plays at UCF for ITA Southeast Regionals starting the 10th. Similar story for the women. Kylie Vilchev lost to Stanford's Valencia Zoo at ITA All Americans in two sets. Tech women will host ITA Southeast Regionals as they so often do. The ITA really likes Byers as a venue, I think, because they're there all the time. But that'll be October 10th as well. Swim and dive. They kicked their season off with what I think is quietly one of Tech's more interesting on again, off again, pretty regular matchups in any sport. Emory was their opponent. You might go, hey, Jake, Emory is D3. As we've noted on this podcast a couple of times, they are the cream of the crop up there with Kenyon for D3 swimming prowess. The men defeated Emory's men 205-91. That's a lot for swimming. That is a thorough handling. Emory is the defending or three-time defending D3 men's diving and swimming national diving and swimming. Sounds weird to say it in that order.
Yeah, you get it
National
wrong.
champions.
It is alphabetical.
Yeah, I'm a swimmer. What can I say? The women also won 216-79. Emory, again, great D3 program, still D3 program. It was in Tech's building and a good way to start off the year before they head to FSU, I believe next week, but certainly it's their next meet, no matter when it is for a dual meet. That is really the only solid, consistent data point we get year over year, especially in the dual meet or tri meet format. So Tech versus FSU is always, at least for me, a great barometer to judge how not just Tech, but also FSU/ACC prognostication looks. So I'm eager to see them head down to Tallahassee for that. Jack, two more. Softball.
Yes.
Softball, 3 games this weekend. Two were up in Knoxville. Yesterday they played Tennessee at 11 a.m., Lipscomb at 1:30, and then today they returned home to get Middle Tennessee. I have no idea what happened in any of these. I would love to know. Lipscomb is a pretty decent, mid-major type program. Middle Tennessee is a team we've seen a number of times in the last few years. That was a 10-inning game, by the way, so I'm sure they saw a lot of looks there. But the big one there is, of course, Tennessee, one of the powers in the sport. I would argue probably a quieter power, but certainly a pretty consistent one. Nevertheless, regular regional host at the very least. I would love to know who was pitching, who was hitting, what was going on. Were any of the freshmen getting looks? Sadly, I don't. But all that to say, this is an incredible slate of 3 teams to get in for a fall exhibition series. In the past we've seen the fall exhibitions be a little soft, and of course the results don't super duper matter. I mean, I spent 14 innings up in Louisville watching them, and all I have to show for it is a home run ball, I guess. But that's why they play the games, and especially seeing hopefully some good looks out of Tennessee in particular is good for rounding all of that out. Do you happen to know? I didn't see anything on Instagram. I definitely didn't see anything on ramblinrec.com. So
Yeah, so the thing is, the softball sports information director is also the volleyball sports information director, and he was at volleyball instead.
Well, that
So
makes a lot more sense.
I definitely have no idea what happens because I don't think that guy knows what happened either. So I know that he left from softball to get them ready and then came straight to O'Keefe. That's all I got there. Then they got one more against North Georgia, it looks like, this coming weekend.
Yeah, they'll have a couple more later in the year, but I just called that out because that is this week. That's at home on the 4th. So if you are around and you're really itching to see some softball, North Georgia, 10 innings. So you'll get certainly a little bit more. I guess it's probably free, but bang for your time, if you will, instead of bang for your buck. But yeah, keep an eye out there. I think they catch Troy and I can't remember who else off the top of my head. I think maybe another Alabama team, but golf will be in action this week as well. The Ben Hogan Collegiate Invite, that'll be in Fort Worth Monday and Tuesday. So they're busy. They're back at it. And Jack, I've got a really minor trivia question that crossed my mind if we want to wrap with that, unless you got something on any of the non-rev.
Jacksonville State. That's the other team they're playing at Newborn.
Jacksonville State. I knew it was an Alabama team. There we go. Good job,
There you
me.
go. So there you go. Uh, minor trivia. Yeah,
Uh,
we can do some minor trivia.
yeah, I went looking ahead because I have this innate link in my head. Let's see if you can think what I'm thinking of. When I see Duke on the schedule in October,
Mm-hmm.
do you know what my instant reaction is?
Duke in October. I mean, there's
Duke
only
playing at Georgia Tech, a home game. Maybe that'll
at
get you there.
here in October. I, I mean, only volleyball and football would be here that time of
It's
year.
football. It's football related. It's
Uh,
traditions related, perhaps. Maybe that gets you.
oh, homecoming.
Yes. I was like, oh man, feels early for homecoming. I haven't heard anything. When's the mini five? No, it
It's in
is
a
not
month.
homecoming. It's not homecoming this weekend. But Jack, do you know how many times we played Duke on homecoming out of the 75 official homecomings that Georgia Tech has had?
75 homecomings. We played Duke every year for about 25,000 years. Um, let's say I'll put it at like 15.
The second highest is 7. The highest, and that's Tulane. The highest is
Uh,
Duke. Georgia Tech has 16 wins against them all time on homecoming. They're 16, 7, and 1 for 24 official
okay.
games. So
I was close enough
it
with
is
the
not
count.
homecoming week. That is against Miami,
Yes.
whom we are 1-0 against. That would be back in the Chan Gailey years, I believe, 06, 07, but not important right now. So
Well, there you go. Coolio,
yeah.
coolio. Uh, I guess
Uh-huh.
before we outro, of note, if you listen to this podcast all the time, if you listen on Spotify, or even if you don't, go to Spotify on your phone. You can only do this on your phone, and put that 5-star thingy there. That does help us out with the algorithm and get us exposed to more tech fans. I know there's a lot of tech fans out there who, when I bring up that we do this podcast, like, oh, I wish I had this when I was a student. So I know the desire's out there. It's just gotta the more word of mouth, the better it goes. So if you got a sec to do that, please do that, or just on
And
Apple. It doesn't matter.
podcasting, you can't see what I'm doing right now, but I'm holding up my phone because I'm doing that right now or making sure that I have done that.
Well,
So
there you go. Yeah.
we're putting our money where our mouth is. I
It,
think I've rated us, but
it,
if we haven't,
it
then
will
I
tell
might as
you
well. So
if you use the app, if you use like the computer app or on desktop, it will tell you you have to rate it on your phone on Spotify. I don't know why they do it that way, but they do. But Apple works as well. Doesn't matter. Whatever gets it going. Um, Jake, I
dang,
will let you.
I've already rated us 5 stars. Shoot,
Well,
can't do it twice.
that's too bad. I guess my last note. I have been giving away from the Rumble Seat stickers just to people as I find them over the last few months. We will definitely be at the game on Saturday. Me and Jake usually tailgate over at the icy lawn. So I'll just say if you're going to be at the game and feel like getting a sticker, I have stickers. I would like to give them away to you. So just come find us. We'll have them. When, I don't know, but sometime that afternoon before the game starts. The game's at 8 o'clock, so we'll be there for a long time. Okay,
Yeah.
take us home, Jake.
All right. As always, thanks for tuning in. This has been Science of the Southland for Jack. I would like to say you can find him on Twitter at Jack Nicholas. You can find me there too at Jake Grant 98. You can find From the Rumble Seat on Twitter as well at FTRS blog. But the best place to find us, the best place to interact with ourselves and our readers is at FromTheRumbleSeat.com. We post these podcasts as well as tons of articles, content, advanced stats, things like that over there. You can email us directly with your feedback at FromTheRumbleSeat@gmail.com. Again, you can find Section 103 at section103.com and at Section 103 on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. And you can find this podcast on Spotify. Rate us 5 stars. Tell your friends. We appreciate all the recommendations. And until we speak again, good night, good luck, and go Jacks.